Mr. Shellhorn, please call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state will call Robert Goodwin.
All right, Mr. Robert Goodwin.
Mr. Goodwin? Judge, while we're waiting for him to come in.
Yep, right over here.
Yes,
I
Mr.
believe any of the
Shellhorn.
photos that I intend to use with this witness are already in evidence except S403.
Just remain standing for 1 second, sir.
I don't believe there's an objection to that exhibit here.
No objection. What's the number?
403.
All right, and it's a photograph, Mr. Shellhorn?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, very good. All right, Mr. Goodwin, can you just place your left hand on that Bible, please? Raise your right hand. My court clerk is now going to administer an oath.
Do you swear in the presence of Almighty God that the testimony you give to this court regarding this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, it is.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Robert Goodwin, Goodwin.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Goodwin, you can have a seat. Please keep your voice up nice and loud. That microphone in front of you simply records. It doesn't amplify your voice for the in the court. If you don't understand a question, just indicate you don't understand, and I'll have counsel rephrase. And if you hear anyone say objection during a question or testimony, just stop answering until the court deals with the objection. Okay? Very good. Mr. Shellhorn, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Goodwin.
Oh,
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and tell them how old you are?
how you doing? I'm Robert Goodwin. I'm 45 years old.
Where do you currently live?
Right now I live in Florida.
Do you know Michael Barisone?
I do.
Do you see him in court today?
I do.
Could you identify him by an article of clothing that he's wearing?
White shirt, blue tie.
The ladies identified my client.
Identifying the defendant, Mr. Barisone.
Mr. Goodwin, do you have any equestrian background?
I do not.
Have you ever ridden a horse?
I have.
What's the extent of your involvement in the equestrian community?
Well, you know, I'm there to support Lauren. I do enjoy animals. I love the horses, and I ride occasionally.
When you say Lauren, who are you referring to?
Lauren Kanarek.
And who is she to you?
She's my girlfriend.
When you say you support her, have you observed her riding horses and competing in various equestrian fields?
Unfortunately, many times.
Now, during 2018 and 2019, do you know who Lauren's coach was?
That would be Michael Barison.
You said you currently live in Florida. Have you ever lived in New Jersey?
I have. Grew up in New Jersey.
Grew up in New Jersey? Have you ever lived in New Jersey as an adult?
Yes.
When you lived in New Jersey as an adult, and I'm going to specifically direct your attention to the summer of 2018 and the summer of 2019, where did you live?
411 West Mill Drive, Long Valley.
What was there?
That was the Michael's farm.
Did you live there with anybody?
I lived with Lauren Kanarek.
Now, you indicated you know Michael Barisone and you knew him to be Lauren's trainer in 2018 and 2019. At the times that you said that you were living at the farm in Long Valley, was Lauren training at those farms, at the farm?
Yes.
Did she have any horses boarded there?
Throughout times, different numbers, but yes.
Do you remember when you first met Michael Barisone?
I believe it was the December 2017.
And do you remember where you first met him?
We came down to his farm in Loxahatchee, Florida.
What was the reason for going to the Loxahatchee farm?
At the time, Lauren was training with a North Carolina trainer who was well, I guess, was coming down to train with either Michael or Vera, I'm not sure which one, but, you know, Lauren came down and we trained with him for a month.
Now, you just mentioned name Vera. Who's Vera?
Vera is Michael's ex-wife.
When you first met the defendant, Michael Barisone, were you aware of him by either reputation or background?
No, I've never heard of it.
Over time, did you become aware of his reputation or his background?
Yes.
What did you come to find out about him?
Meaning,
What did you come to find out about him and his involvement in the equestrian community?
he was very, I guess, well-regarded trainer. He was, just been to the Olympics, coached some Olympians.
I think you indicated when Lauren first went there to Florida, she was training with another trainer at another farm in North Carolina.
That's correct.
What made her decide to change and go to Florida?
So, you know, towards the end of our stay, when we were about to go home, Michael approached Lauren and said, you know,
Objection.
The defendant's statement, Judge.
Yeah, what's the objection?
Was he there?
yes.
He was there. All right. It's withdrawn. Go ahead. You want to repeat the question?
I'll put some context. Were you present at the time that the defendant had a conversation with Lauren?
I was.
And that was in Florida?
Correct.
In general, what was the context of that conversation?
You know, that we should come train with him. North Carolina is where dressage dreams go to die. You know, we'll get your, you know, it was 2-3 years ago, so I mean, can't remember exactly, but, you know, it just was just come with me, I'll make you a better rider, do the things you want to do.
Now, how would you describe Michael Barisone physically at the time that you met him in Florida?
He's a large guy, a lot of personality, intimidating stature,
Do you know how tall he was?
6'3", 6'4",
And how tall are you?
5'8".
Now, you indicated that you met him at the farm in Florida. Do you know whether that was his farm?
Yes. When we first went down there, we trained on his farm, but we were at another farm, which I believe was his brother-in-law's.
But at some point, did you come to find out that he owned a farm in Florida?
Yeah, like I said, we trained on his property. It's the only one with the arena and the ring.
Now, after Lauren decided to go and train with Michael Barisone, where did she train during the years of 2018 and 2019? That's right. There's water. There's water.
Yeah, there's
truck
water there
if
if you need it. That's
Oh,
fresh?
yeah, can you?
Yes, it is. It's fresh
Yeah, I
water.
got it.
Yeah, just be careful.
Don't pour it over your table.
Yeah, it rushes out sometimes. Just be careful.
So my question was, during 2018 and 2019, when Lauren decided to train with Michael Barisone, where did she do that training?
So we started out in Florida and through the winter months, and then through the rest of the year, 9 months of the year, it was in Long Valley, New Jersey.
Let me draw your attention to the summer of 2018, the first summer that you lived in Long Valley. Where did you live?
Summer of 2018. So we lived in the middle floor of the Long Valley farmhouse.
And do you recall where you lived, what floor of the farmhouse you lived on?
The middle floor. So it was 3 floors, I guess, the second floor.
Did anyone else live in the farm at that time?
The working students lived on the first floor, which was basement. We lived on the second floor, me and Lauren, and Justin Harden lived on the third floor.
What else do you remember about the property of 411 West Mill Road in terms of what other features or landmarks do you remember being on the property?
A pond, a few barns, a lot of green fields, grassy fields. Like a nice garage. And,
Do you know approximately how far it is from the farmhouse to the barn or the stable?
quarter mile, give or take.
And how do you get from the farmhouse to the barn or stable?
We drive, walk, and
Is there a driveway, a roadway? or
yeah,
something?
sorry, there's a driveway.
Now, you indicated that when you lived there in 2018, you lived there with Lauren.
Correct.
Did you have any pets there with you?
Yes, we had. Yeah,
What kind of pets?
2 dogs.
And I'm going to show you what's been moved into evidence as S403. What's S403 a picture of?
It's a picture of my dog Rosie on a leash.
And how big is Rosie? Approximately.
25 pounds, 25 pounds.
Was she about the same size in August of 2019?
She's been the same size since she was full grown.
How old is she now?
6 to 7, maybe.
Did you live in a separate or a different part of the house in the summer of 2019 when you came back north?
Yes, at that point we moved up to the 3rd floor apartment.
Who was living there during the first summer you were there?
Justin Harding, the trainer.
Do you have any personal knowledge of why you moved from the first level of the house to the second level?
Yes, when we were in Florida, there was a pipe that burst and, I guess the pipe froze, and then when it unthawed, it burst and flooded the whole apartment. The pipe was in the ceiling of the 2nd floor.
So did that have any effect on the first floor, well, what I'll call the main floor? Did it have any effect on the main floor of the house?
Yes, it flooded the main floor and, the water settled in the basement.
As a result of that, was the first floor of the house, meaning the basement floor, what you called the first floor, was that livable or habitable?
The basement floor was pretty much gutted.
How about the main floor of the house?
The main floor was semi-gutted. Some rooms were had heavy damage and some didn't.
And then what about that second floor apartment or upstairs apartment?
Pretty much untouched because, like I said, what I mean to say is it came from the floor of the floor of that apartment.
Now, let me ask you, I just want to ask you some questions about Lauren's horses. Did you ever help her take care of the horses?
All done.
Do you remember how many horses were at the property in August of 2019?
2019, we had 4 horses.
And do you have any awareness of how much Michael Barisone was being paid on a monthly basis for boarding and training those horses?
Yeah, so the 2 horses we originally came with were $2,500 per horse. The 3rd one Lauren bought from Michael, and then the 4th one was in trade for some work I've been doing at the farm.
And I'm going to ask you that question in just a few minutes. During the time that Lauren was training with Michael Barisone, were there any other trainers that worked with her? Besides Michael?
Oh, yeah, yes, Michael's staff. Justin Harding was the main trainer.
If I didn't ask you this question specifically, what did you do to help out with the horses?
Well, You know, anything from getting them ready, medical, spending time with them.
Did any of the
Just
horses?
overall.
Did any of the horses have any medical issues?
Symphony or Old Mare.
Symphony, the old mare. And what was your understanding of the medical issue with Symphony?
She got a chronic cellulitis, which means it's chronic flare-ups, and the way to take care of that is to wrap it and keep the edema out of the leg
Did you ever do that wrapping?
almost every night.
And how many times a day did you have to do that wrapping?
So I wrapped once, and then 12 hours later I'd take it off.
And was there a specific time of day that you typically would try and do that?
Usually before I went to bed, and then when I got up in the morning.
Now, you had just indicated that you were doing some work at the property.
That's correct.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about what kind of work you were doing at the property?
Michael had a nice farm. It was a very nice farm. I guess he wanted to just update it and make it look more impressive. We did some steel, outdoor steel siding for the ceilings and the walls. Some new lighting. Updated some things. He was updating the arena, the wood in the arena. Just wanted it to look more presentable, so when people came in, gave that wow factor. Olympic coach, Olympic facility. Just dress it up, I guess, a little bit.
And were you able to help out with that?
Yes.
What was the general nature of your agreement for doing some of that work?
The general nature was, we were supposed to bring, I guess, Symphony, and we had another horse in overseas. They were supposed to come a little earlier, but the general nature was to work off board and training for those other two horses, which ended up coming a lot later than we thought.
Did you also do some work at the farmhouse?
I did when we got back that year.
And what was the general nature of the work you did in the farmhouse?
Well, like I said, it was flooded, and that needed to be taken care of at that point. Michael and Mary Haskins wanted to move in there, and Mary Haskins has the kids, so they wanted to make it. They wanted to make those two floors. Good house for Michael, Mary Haskins, and the kids.
I'm going to show you some photos that I believe are already in evidence. What is S220 a picture of?
That is the main floor of the house looking out.
And where does that door that's open through there, where does that open towards?
So that goes right to the back patio and the back driveway.
And the walls what room of the house is this?
So this is the kitchen, and then through that first door, I guess, is a foyer or mud room.
So is this the floor that you lived in the first summer you lived there in 2018?
That's correct.
Did the wall look like that when you were there in 2018?
It did not. Actually, right above the picture is where the leak started from.
I'm going to draw your attention to the next photo, which is S222 in evidence. Is this another picture of the kitchen?
That is.
And on the wall and the ceiling on the right side of the picture, can you tell the jury what that is?
I'm sorry, the wall and the ceiling on the
So
right?
sort of above the stove and to the right of the stove. Is that how the wall looked when you lived there in the summer
Yeah.
of 2018?
Oh, no. I mean, that's from the water damage.
Were you there when any of the water damage was being cleaned up or remediated?
No.
Is this how the house looked generally, the condition of it when you got back in 2019?
Pretty much.
I'm going to show you a picture S224. What's S224 a picture of?
That is the dining room of the main floor apartment.
And again, is that wall consistent with your understanding of some of the damage that was done?
Some of the damage that was done, yes.
What's S227 a picture of?
That is the basement.
And is this how the basement looked when you moved there in the summer of 2018, the first summer you lived there?
No.
What's different?
Wall around the furnace, that was pretty much open to the there's a lot different, you know.
I mean, I guess is it fair to
Mainly,
say?
mainly that it's under construction.
And was it finished during the summer of 2018, the first summer you were there?
Yes, it was livable.
The makeshift workbench there in the middle with the tools and various other materials on it, were those things that you were using to do your work?
Yeah, I must have been painting doors at that point.
And is S228 just another picture of the basement and some of your tools?
That's where the old kitchen used to be for me.
S229, another picture of the basement?
That's that was the bathroom before it was flooded. Or, well, after it was flooded.
What's S225 a picture of?
It was one of the bedrooms.
And did it look like this when you got back to New Jersey in 2019?
It did not look like the rest of the basement. No sheetrock. Well, it might have been half wall sheetrock. Doors are new. Floor is new.
And is some of that work that you were doing at the property
That's correct.
during the summer of 2019?
That's correct.
I think the last picture of the basement is S226. Is that a picture of another room?
Picture of the other room.
Did you do any work in this room?
Tiles, doors, base molding. Built a wall for the walk-in closet. Placed sheetrock. Insulation.
Now, I think you also had indicated to the jury that you were doing some work up at the barn.
Sure, that's the corrugated steel up there in the ceiling.
And I'm just going to refer, so the record is clear, you're looking at S318. The picture is S318 in the bottom right corner.
Yes.
And so you said that there's some corrugated steel on the ceiling.
Yep.
Can you tell the jury what area of the picture you're looking at?
Sure, right above the green barn doors is the new work, and actually the wall on the right, if you look at the ceiling there, that's the old barn ceiling.
So did you put up corrugated steel like that throughout
Yeah,
other parts of the barn?
framing, some electrical wires. Apparently I trimmed out that door, it looks like new trim there. And the corrugated steel.
So just so I'm clear, when you got back the summer of 2019, the root ceiling in the barn or the stable looked the way it did on the right side of the picture?
When we got back in 2019, no. This work was done in the, I guess, summer of 2018. Yeah, summer 2018.
Okay, so you did this work the first
Yeah.
summer you were there.
Yeah, when we came back, the apartment was flooded, and I did some work in the barn, after that, but most of the work was done in the house when we got back for 2019.
So going back then to the first summer you got there, did the ceiling mostly look like it does on the right side of the picture?
It did, that is correct.
And then you put up that corrugated steel on, at least you had started putting it up on other parts of the ceiling.
Yeah, insulation too.
And there's on the right-hand side of the picture, it looks like there's a loop or a wire hanging down there.
Yep,
Were you doing any electrical work?
I did. I think Michael wanted to run some fans, stallage above the horses' stalls. Wanted to put chandeliers in the barn. New LED lighting throughout the barn.
And you were doing some of that work?
That's correct.
Direct your attention to S324. What section of the barn is this?
This is the lockers. The main entrance, pretty much, I guess, when you come in through the barn.
Well, and what's through that white door straight ahead?
That's the clubhouse.
The corrugated steel ceiling, did you do that?
Me, Michael, and Mike McGran, we've all rotated.
And are any of those tools or materials that are on the floor there, is any of that anything that you were working with at that time?
It depends when the picture was taken. But it could be an array of my tools, Michael's tools. I'm not too sure. I'll tell you, that's Michael's saw right there. Michael's levels.
Now, in terms of direction, who made the decisions about what was going to be done?
Michael had full control over everything.
So did he tell you what to do?
He did.
In terms of living at the farm for several summers, including, I guess, in Florida as well, and being around Michael Barisone, what were your observations of his personality?
He had a very bold, loud personality, alpha male. Funny, personable, sometimes angry.
What kind of a sense of humor did he have?
So I mean, he not my type.
What's that mean?
Off-color jokes, borderline racist, sexist.
Now, at some point during the time that you were living and working on the property, did things socially and professionally fall apart between yourself and Lauren and Michael Barison?
Yes.
And what was the culmination of those things falling apart?
I would have to say the day Michael drove the truck down and tried to murder us.
Now, before I ask you questions about that, do you own any guns?
I do not know.
Does Lauren own any guns?
She does.
Do you know how many guns she owns?
She owns one handgun.
And where did she, let me ask you, has she ever had that gun in New Jersey to your knowledge?
No.
Do you know where she leaves the gun?
This is our house in North Carolina.
Now, during the time that you were living and training at the defendant's farms in Florida and New Jersey, did you keep a residence or keep a house or something of that nature in North Carolina?
We did. We kept our residence.
Have you ever used drugs in the past?
I have.
What drugs?
I had a drug problem pretty much all adult life. I had anything I could do to get out of my anxiety and personality and all that stuff I could do.
Are you sober now?
I am.
How long have you been sober?
Quite a few years. I've relapsed a few times throughout the years, but good majority of 7 years maybe.
Did you ever use any illegal drugs at the time you were living on Michael Barisone's farm?
On the farm now.
Were you ever under the influence of any illegal drugs when you were around people from the farm?
No.
Now, let me take you back to August 7th of 2019. Is that the day that you recall just indicating that Michael Barisone tried to kill you?
It is.
Where did that happen?
It happened on the back patio.
Behind the house on the property?
Correct, which is the main entrance. So it's a little.
Now, when we talk about, or when you're referring to things falling apart, and that might be my words, can you describe in August of 2019 some of what was going on from your observations, with issues about you or Lauren being at the barn?
From the best I gather, it was becoming a tense situation. Not too sure.
When you say it was a tense situation, did anything change about when you were allowed to be at the barn?
Yeah, I think we set a time limit for when we could come to the barn and wrap Symphony's legs.
Did that time limit exist when Symphony first got to the farm?
No.
How did you feel when you would go up to the barn and interact with people, meaning either the defendant or other staff?
More specifically,
Did you know the defendant's girlfriend?
yeah,
Who is that?
Mary Haskins.
Mary Haskins Gray?
Yeah,
Did she live at the farm at any point when you did?
she did.
Do you recall where she lived?
I guess when we first came down there, she lived in the barn with Michael, the upstairs apartments in the barn. And when we came back in the summer of 2019, they moved into the construction house.
So when you say, when you first came there and they lived in the barn, do you mean summer of 2018?
Yes.
And then it was the summer of 2019, you said she was living with Michael Barisone on like the main level of the house.
Yes.
And is that at the time where you were living with Lauren upstairs on the second level or the apartment?
That's correct.
So in August of 2019 in particular, just for a reference point, did you ever go up to the barn to do things up there, whether it be work or take care of the horses or something else, where people dealt with you a different way than they had before?
By August 7th, I mean, because during that week of August, I mean, communication broke down. Like, it seemed to be just very tense. You know, I didn't want to go up there very much.
What was different?
Uncomfortable.
Did you observe any issues between your girlfriend Lauren and Mary Haskins, for example?
And specifically, I'm not, you know, I wasn't caught up with the day-to-day things with them.
Did you ever make any direct threats of violence to Michael Barisone?
Never.
Did you ever make any threatening gestures or motions to Michael Barisone?
Never.
Now, in August of 2019, at some point, did you have any cameras at the farmhouse?
I did.
Can you tell the jury approximately when you remember getting those cameras?
2 days before the shooting, and you know, it was too, you know, because the situation was so tense at the time. We were going to a show the next week, and I installed them for that reason, and that reason only.
Did you read the instruction manual for those cameras when you got them?
Wasn't quite what I was expecting. No.
In other words, were you familiar with all the buttons and bells and whistles?
Wasn't familiar with how it worked.
At some point, can you tell the jury, well, did you install the cameras?
I did install them.
Were they inside the house and outside the house?
That is correct.
And at some point, did something happen with those that you changed the settings?
Yeah, like I said, you know, obviously I didn't know, you know, that day was going to be anything special. I was upstairs doing laundry. I had one camera in my house in the hallway. And every time I walked past it, I would get a notification on my phone. It would go bing, 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 bing. And with blink cameras, they record for up to a minute. And then they shut off for 10 seconds to a minute before it could record again. It's mainly a motion-activated camera system that, you know, just like the name, it's a blink or a snapshot in time. It's not a constant 24-hour surveillance system. It's almost like a, if you're not familiar with it, with a Ring, you know, Ring doorbell camera or something like that. It notifies when there's motion and sends you a little clip of the motion.
And because of, like you said, when you were doing laundry and the bing, 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 what did you do?
I turn the cameras off.
Did you have a paid subscription or anything extra with the system?
No, you get free storage.
At some point, are you aware whether Michael Barisone and Mary Haskins Gray moved out of that farmhouse in either July or August of 2019?
Yeah, about a week prior.
A week prior to the shooting?
August 7th, yes.
Do you know where they went?
Moved back up to the farm.
Now, you indicated the first summer you were there, Justin Harden, the assistant trainer, was staying in the second floor of the farmhouse?
The third floor, top floor, yeah.
Third floor. You were staying there during the summer of 2019.
Correct.
Do you know where Justin Harden was living at that time?
Just now I moved up to the barn too.
Where were the working students living?
At the time, actually, I guess before we left, Michael was building a bunch of apartments over there. I mean, it was I guess the end goal to put all the working students at the farm, and not to have them at the house.
During that, what we'll call that week, so call it August 1st to August 7th. During that week or so, are you aware whether the police were ever at the property?
On a daily basis, almost.
And if you could just keep your voice up, just to make sure everyone hears you.
Just
Did you say on a daily basis?
I did.
Did the police ever come and talk to you or talk to Lauren?
Every time they came,
Did you call the police on all those occasions?
I did not.
At some point, did you become aware that Michael Barisone wanted you to leave the property, didn't want you to live there anymore?
Yeah, I mean, he was making life difficult at the farm for us to want to stay.
Is there a reason that you didn't just leave?
One, I think there was, prior to that week, I think there was, hopes trying to salvage the relationship. A lot tied up between, Michael and myself, Lauren, like all of us were tied up in some sort of thing. And, ultimately, we would try to work something out.
Now, do you remember, how would you describe, I think you said tense and uncomfortable are two ways you would describe things.
Yes.
Did there come a point in August where you made a report to the Washington Township Building or Construction or Health Department?
That's correct.
What was the nature of that?
The nature of it was, with all the tension, I think we were up there doing Symphony's leg, and Cassandra was in the laundry room. She started the dryer, and she told Ruth that, hey, can you keep an eye on this washer? I'm going upstairs. I forget, she said she was going to bed, but it was pretty late. Said, this dryer's not shutting off. Can you keep an eye on it and make sure it turns off? So there was a concern. I said something to her. She laughed at me and ignored me. So, at that point, all communication is broken down. You've got a potential fire hazard. And, at that point, I was, sick of everything that was going on. And I think we've come to terms with, Michael has made it too hard to live there.
Did you, how did you make that report to the Washington Township, what I'll just call the health department? How did you make the report?
I think I dictated to Lauren. She wrote it down, and then I brought the hand delivered it to the, what is it, building department, health department, whatever it was.
Do you remember what day
Fire
you
marshal.
delivered that?
I believe it was August 5th.
And are you aware whether or not the township sent out various people to inspect that day or the next day?
I think the very next day they came with a team.
Did you interact with them at all?
The team of people?
Yes.
I don't believe so.
Now, on Wednesday, August 7th, do you remember what you were doing that morning, generally?
Probably the regular, I think, breakfast, maybe took the wraps off, and then came back to the house and was doing laundry.
When you say take the wraps off, would that be Symphony's wraps?
Correct.
Was that up at the stable?
Yes.
Did you see Michael Barisone at all that morning?
I do not recall. I don't think so.
Remember what you were doing around 2 o'clock that afternoon?
I do.
What was that?
I was upstairs folding my laundry.
And is that on the third floor of the house or
floor.
the upstairs you were
Correct.
talking about?
Yep.
Do you know where Lauren was?
She was downstairs on the patio. She had a love seat there that she sat in pretty much all the time.
Do you remember having a phone call with anyone that afternoon?
I believe I was on the phone with our attorney, Edward David.
What was the reason for having an attorney?
Like I said, I think I think they ultimately wanted to try to work out the relationship with Michael and the horses. But then there needed to be I guess we were trying to work that out, and also try to figure out what we were going to do about the deal of work for training the horses.
I mean, I guess are you indicating? Were you aware whether Michael had an attorney?
Michael did have an attorney.
And did you and Lauren know that?
Yeah, I can't remember how far in advance, but
At some point, did you meet with the attorney you just talked about, Ed David?
I did.
So that afternoon, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you were having a phone call with Ed David. Where were you having that phone call?
Upstairs in the apartment.
And at some point, did anything happen that caused you to go downstairs or outside?
Sure, Lauren came up the stairs and told me Michael was here.
Did you see how he got there?
I did not.
Where did you go after she said that he was there?
I came down, she wanted me to talk to him.
And where did you go?
I walked down the stairs and out the back door, which is the front door, entering onto the patio.
When you come through that door, what's on the inside of that door? What's
This
in
is
that
the
room?
laundry room.
And when you come through that door, what's right outside the door?
The back porch, or back porch.
How many steps is that porch, approximately?
I think one step coming out of the house, and you got the little, 3x3 patio, and then 3 more steps going down to the patio.
If you come out that door, did you see Michael Barison?
I did.
Where did you see him?
I was hiding behind a bush on the patio.
Which side of the patio, or which side
To the
of
right of the door.
which side of the steps is the bush?
To the right.
And he was behind that bush,
He was.
so he would have been to your right?
Yes.
How would you describe the way he looked?
Pretty normal.
Were you still holding the phone at that point?
Right as I came down the stairs, I handed off the phone to Lauren.
Had you hung up the phone, or do you remember if the
no,
phone
I
was
just-
still connected?
No, I mean, because it was our attorney, and
So no, you hadn't hung it up.
No, I hadn't hung it up. It was either useful that he was on the phone at the time.
Did you see whether there were any vehicles in the driveway?
Michael's truck, I think I had 2 vehicles and a trailer in the driveway.
And what kind of vehicle did you know Michael Barisone to drive?
I just bought a Dodge Ram 3500
What color was it?
silver.
Did you see if anyone else was in that vehicle or near that vehicle?
No.
When you said that Michael Barisone was hiding behind the bush, approximately how much of his body could you see?
It's maybe the chest up, maybe shoulders up.
And you said that you recall him to be about how tall?
6'3", 6'4".
Could you see his hands?
I only saw his hands when he put his arms in the air.
If his hands were at his side, could you see his
No.
hands? Could you see his waist?
No,
Could you see his pockets?
no,
Were you holding or carrying anything in your hands?
I was not. I handed off the phone to Lauren before I came out there.
And you said you stepped out onto the porch?
Stepped out onto the porch.
Did you say anything to him, or did he say anything to you?
I looked over to him, and like I said, I thought the position of where he was standing was very, very weird. When I came out, he looked over at me and said, "How do we fix this? I don't want a war," and showed me his hands and threw them up in the air. And that's what Michael said.
Did you? Were those his exact words, or is that
Pretty
kind
much,
of-
yes.
And just let me finish the questions
Okay,
before you
sorry.
answer. That's all right. That's all right. I just don't want to talk over you. Do you remember if those were his exact words, or if it was like generally paraphrased what he said?
I believe those are the exact words I remember.
Did you say anything in response to him?
I said, "You're the one who brought the attorney into it, so I'll have the attorneys talk it over."
Could you see if he was holding a phone?
I couldn't see anything but his shoulders and his head at that point.
Did you see where Lauren was at that point?
Lauren was behind me. She was either in the doorway or I think she was standing right behind me on the patio.
Were you able to see whether she was holding or carrying anything besides the phone?
No. I mean, she may have had her phone on her, but no, I didn't see anything.
After he said something to the effect of, "How can we end this?" and you said the lawyers were involved to let them handle it, what did you see next?
Lauren said, "I'll go talk to him," and walked down the stairs and walked over to Michael.
Did you see how close she got to him?
I guess she just got around the bush and within 4 feet. That's when Michael raised up the gun and shot her twice.
Did you see him hold up the gun?
I didn't see him hold up the gun.
Did you see what the gun looked like?
I don't remember at that time if I remember what the gun looked like, but I did see the gun in his hands and I did see him shoot Lauren.
When he raised the gun up in his hand, was it above the top of that bush that you were talking
Yeah,
about?
he kind of stepped out towards her as well.
Do you remember how many times he shot?
Shot at her twice.
Do you remember if you saw the bullets hit her?
No.
Can you describe when you saw the defendant holding up the gun and shooting, what did you see or what do you remember hearing or what was your emotion?
There's a lot in that question, Mr. Shellhorn.
I'll break it down.
Break it down, please.
When you saw Michael Barisone hold up the gun and shoot Lauren, do you remember specifically what you heard?
I heard the gunshots.
And do you remember specifically how you felt at that moment?
I was just kind of frozen in amazement.
How far away were you approximately from Michael Barisone at the time that he shot Lauren in front of you?
About 12 feet.
Do you remember what Lauren did after she got shot?
She turned around and ran away.
And which direction did she run in?
Ran away. She ran towards the opposite direction of Michael.
So would that be towards that side yard, that grass yard?
Yeah, towards the pond.
Were you watching her at that point, watching Michael, or watching something else?
Just watching Michael.
Did you see specifically where she went or what she did?
No, she just ran over to the side.
So after Michael shot Lauren twice, what did you, and you said you were watching him, what did you see him do next?
Well, she turned and ran, and he ran. It looked like he was chasing after her, but then he pointed the gun at me and fired a shot at me.
Now, where about was he when he fired that shot at you? In the same place or a different place?
Probably half the distance at that point. Like I said, he took a step when he shot at Lauren, and when Lauren ran and he ran, he probably took like 3 or 4 steps. So he was, kind of by the gravel of the driveway coming around that bush when he shot at me.
Where were you standing when he shot at you?
I was standing on the patio. Oh, no, I'm sorry, on the porch, top of the porch.
Did you see him shoot, hear him shoot, or something else?
I saw him lift up the gun and shoot.
Do you see where how did you know that he shot the gun?
Well, when he was bringing the gun up, I think I had my hand on the door, and we took the shot. I dove inside the house. Glass, the tempered glass, shot around the room. So I knew he hit the window. Wasn't sure if I was hit.
You didn't get shot,
No.
did you?
No.
After you saw or heard the glass shattering around the window, what did you do next?
I think at that point I realized what was going on. Realized Lauren was outside. Michael was outside with a gun, shooting at us. So, I got up and went to go charge outside.
What did you see when you got up and went to go charge back outside?
Michael Barisone running inside the house to.
And so would that means he was coming up those stairs towards you?
He was coming for me. Yes.
Were you able to see the gun at that point?
I think I surprised him coming out. So I didn't see the gun in his hand as he was running up the stairs, and I was, worried for my life.
What did you do?
I had about 1 second to make a decision, and the decision was he was running up. I was in the house, and I pretty much had to leap and punch him.
Do you know approximately had he gotten onto the steps yet or not?
He was coming up, and I think he may have just got on the his first step onto the porch when I made contact with him.
When you said that you punched him, do you remember which hand you punched him with?
Punched him with my right hand.
What happened after you punched him?
I think I dazed him a little bit. He kind of stood there a little bit. My hand was in complete agony and pain. I think I might have swung at him again. Michael, then turned around, and I didn't know if he was going to chase after Lauren, but as soon as he gave me his back, I took advantage of it.
And what did you do?
Threw him in a chokehold.
And what happened when you put him in the chokehold?
He passed out very quickly.
When he passed out, what happened to his body?
We fell onto the concrete in front of the stairs.
Were you laying on top of him, next to him, or standing, or something
I was
else?
on top of him.
Did you keep him in the chokehold?
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Were you watching Lauren while this was going on between you and Mike?
Actually, I was going to go back there. So as he turned around and went to run away, I jumped on his. I threw my arm around his neck and I put him in the chokehold. And at that time, that's when I saw the gun come up again. And then Lauren, out of nowhere, came and grabbed his arm, and then he passed out and fell onto the concrete. Sorry.
So you said that the first time he picked the gun up and he shot Lauren, you didn't really take note of the gun and the way it looked?
No.
But you just said that after you punched him and got him into the chokehold, his arm came up with the gun?
His arm came up.
And did you have a chance to take note, or do you remember what the gun looked like at that moment?
I did. I remember seeing pink on the gun.
Do you remember what the state of the gun looked like, or what the?
So I'm not very familiar with guns. So, it looked like it was jammed at that point. That's what I thought. I thought at that point when he came up, you know, when I first saw it come up, I thought he was coming to shoot me. And then when I saw the barrel and the slide kicked back, I wasn't that concerned about it. But
Now you said that at that point, that's when you first noticed the gun. You had him in a chokehold, and then that's the next time that you noticed Lauren.
that's correct.
And what did she do when you said that she came over?
Like I said, when that arm came up, she came to. She couldn't help me out.
When you said that you put Michael into a chokehold, and you said that he sort of lost consciousness or fell down, do you remember where Lauren was at that point?
Sorry, you gotta repeat the question.
Sorry? When you said you had Michael in a chokehold and he fell to the ground, and I think you said that you were on top of him. Did you see where Lauren was at that point?
Yeah, you know, I don't know if we all fell over or what, but Lauren was pretty much almost on her knees right next to where we fell. So I don't know if we took her down with us or.
Did you become aware at some point that Lauren had called 911?
Yeah, I think I was holding Michael down, and I told Lauren to call 911.
And did you end up speaking on the 911 call at some point?
I think at some point I realized that Michael actually shot her when I saw the bullet holes through the back of her shirt. And that was sometime during the 911 call when I noticed, you know, everything that was going on.
What position was she in when you noticed that you saw the bullet holes?
She was kind of on her knees or on her butt. She was kind of sitting up like this.
Do you remember when the police got there?
They did.
What do you remember seeing when the first police officer or officers arrived?
Cop came out with his gun drawn and came over to where me, Michael, and Lauren were all huddled up.
Did you say anything to the police officer?
I think he asked where the shooter is, and I said he's right here, pointing to Michael, who was underneath me.
Did you know where the gun was at that point?
He was underneath him.
After the police officer came over with the gun drawn and you indicated that Michael was the shooter, what did you do next?
So he had me get off. He had me get off Michael. He had the gun trained on Michael. My dog got out during the incident. After I jumped through the door, my dog came out. So she was out there, and you know, she I guess bit at the officer's leg, and the officer pointed his gun at her, and I said, "Please don't shoot my dog." And I tried to grab my dog.
Was that your dog Rosie?
My dog Rosie.
Did Rosie bite you at all during the scuffle?
Probably many times.
What did you do with Rosie?
When I got a hold of her, I walked up the porch, threw her inside, and closed the door.
And then where did you go?
Then I went out into the driveway. I forget if the second officer was there by then, and you know, I was handcuffed and watched the rest of the scene unfold.
After you got handcuffed, what area were you in?
I was in the gravel driveway.
Rob, I'm going to show you S345. What's that a picture of?
This is the bush Michael was hiding behind.
And can you describe for the jury the general area where Michael was standing when you came out the door?
Sure. So the chair, point next to me. That chair to the left on the house, that was, typically my seating area. That was in between the table and the house. So that was pulled out, and Michael was standing right there behind that bush, to the left, right there, of the house. And that thing thing's about chest height, right there. That little roof where all the bags are on, that's about chest height, my chest.
Your chest. So was he standing between that little roof and the table behind the bush?
Yes, yes. Like I said, where that chair used to be. Well,
When he shot Lauren, you said that she had taken a couple of steps down and had come off the porch.
that was correct.
Do you see the approximate area where she was, or where you thought you saw her when Michael shot her?
Yes, to the right of the table, you see the white speck? The white speck on the concrete?
And I think there's a
Laser
pointer
point.
there, so we could try that.
So there is the white speck. She was probably maybe in between that white speck there and maybe, another step around.
Can you just clarify, Your Honor, with the jury whether they were able to see that?
Yes, members of the jury, were you able to see that? All right. Jury members, everyone? All right, everyone's nodding their head.
After you got handcuffed, did you get, or do you remember if you got any medical treatment at the scene?
You look at my hand.
And when you got handcuffed, do you see the approximate area where you were in this picture?
Probably just on the outside of, to the right, maybe over here, or maybe just in the picture, but somewhere over in this area over here.
So over in the direction of that gravel pile.
Yes.
Do you remember where you went after you were at the scene?
I went to the straight to the police station.
How did you get there?
Police escort in the backseat of a police car.
Did they interview you there?
They did.
Do you remember what the weather was like that afternoon when you were leaving the property?
I think before I pulled out and the police car started to rain.
And what do you remember about how heavy or light the rain was?
At that point, I think it was very light. I think maybe it's got a little heavier as we pulled out and started driving to the police station.
After you were done at the police station, did they take pictures of you?
They did.
They collect your
I
clothing?
believe they took my shirt. I think they took my shirt and my pants.
And did you give them your phone?
I did.
Now, did you go to the hospital that night?
I went to the hospital to see if Lauren was alive.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. Did you go to a different hospital to see Lauren that night? Were you treated?
What do you mean a different
Were
hospital?
you treated at the same hospital where Lauren was treated?
I don't know that. Hold on one second. I may have misheard. I thought he was treated at the scene and went to the police department.
I asked the question out of order, Your Honor. I'll clarify.
Just clarify that, please.
Did you end up going to the hospital yourself that night?
Again, could we clarify for him or to see Lauren?
Right, I think it was,
Just
you're
ask
asking
him
if
if he goes
he
to the
went to a hospital for treatment.
I just asked him that.
All right. Did you go to a hospital for treatment after you went to the police station?
I did not. I mean, I went to the hospital first to check on Lauren because I was in the police station for hours and I didn't know the status of Lauren. I didn't know if she was alive or dead. First thing I did was went to the hospital
To check on Lauren.
to check on Lauren, make sure she was okay.
And at some point, did you go to the hospital to get checked out yourself?
I think maybe very early next morning, I think I finally went to the hospital.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, very good. It's just about 3 o'clock. We'll take our afternoon recess, stretch our legs, use the facilities if needed, and we'll reconvene in about 15 minutes. Thank you. Yes, we can go off to that. Oh, you can step down. Just stay down at this end of the hallway, please. Thank you. Hold on one second. Yes. What was it, number 7?
Yes.
All right.